All right, welcome back to Dinner for Two Cooking with Chef Warren Goodgall. Today we're gonna do some Brandy flambéed pork chops. Now it's a great fall dish, you know, it's that time of year. What's always great is to get local ingredients. Now I'm from Southern Ontario and my daughter and I go apple picking at this time of year. And we got some Granny Smith apples, which is a great thing to cook with, love apples, but we're gonna do a great dish here today. So first off, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna preheat the pan. So I'm gonna turn it on to medium-high heat. We're gonna give it let it heat up for about 3 minutes or so, and then we're gonna start searing the meat, right? So I have some pork chops here, center cut chops. They're nice and thick. These are really thick chops we're using here today, and so they're gonna take quite some time to cook, but it's just a nice dish, almost like a roast is what we're gonna do. We're gonna add some fresh thyme, some garlic. We're gonna put a bit of cabbage in here part of the season. We're gonna put a little bit of some red onion, some cream. We're gonna do a brandy flambé in this, and just make something really flavorsome, right? A little bit on the heavier side, but it's that time of year, so that's what we're gonna do cooking today. So a couple minutes to preheat this, and we'll get on the go. All right, so let's check to see if we're good to go. Touching the pan, it's a bit warm. I'll put a few drops of water. We want the water to bead, right? Oh, do you see that, how the water just evaporated? That's a great sign that we're just not hot enough. So I'm gonna put the lid on, we're gonna wait. If it evaporates, the pan's not hot enough, let it preheat a few more minutes. We want that water to bead so we can really sear the meat quite nicely. So we're gonna let it preheat another minute and a half, 2 minutes. We'll check it, and then we should be good to go. All right, so let's check it out. Pan's getting nice and warm. Let's make it check again. See if our water beads. There we go. I got a beautiful beading on the water. We can see that, just beading all over, but we don't need that water. So let's get rid of that. Water comes out, and the meat goes in. Now I do have it on a medium-high. I'm gonna turn this down a wee bit because that flame looks really large. And I'm gonna put a very small amount of seasoning on the meat, right? Because we're cooking with no oil. You don't wanna use too much seasonings in the beginning because those seasonings may burn, right? So I'm just gonna lightly salt the chops here. There's a really light salt and light pepper, and that's all we're going to use for the seasoning now. Let's get this in the pan and get it going, right? So in she goes. All right, now these chops are huge. So now that the pan's nice and hot, I want to turn the stove down, and I'm looking underneath because a great way to check is if you're cooking on gas, you want to see how high the flame is to the pan. Generally, you're gonna have a high heat, the flame will be touching the pan. If you want a medium low heat, you want a very small flame underneath, right? So I'm just gonna check this, it's looking good. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sear this because it's such a thick piece of meat for a good 8 to 10 minutes. So I'm gonna put the lid on a jar. So pork's a very lean meat. We're not gonna have a lot of fat spitting out of this. And we'll let that sear for a few minutes, and we'll come back and we'll check it. And what we got on the go here, I have my apples sitting in water with a bit of lemon. There's a good trick to know, because when you cut up apples, the same with the potatoes, you know, when they start to oxidize, they're gonna go brown, right? So we add a bit of lemon into the water, and the lemon will help fight, it's like an antioxidant, the lemon, it'll help fight that oxidization. So we're gonna let that sit in the water just for a few minutes until we're ready to cook, because the apples go in towards the end. And the worst thing is to put a whole bunch of brown apples into your dish, because we want to have that nice color. We don't want them to be brown in the end. They'll lose a bit of their color, but they're still gonna look quite fantastic. So let's sear this for a few minutes. We'll come back and we'll get this on the go. All right, so it's been about 8 minutes or so. We're just gonna give this a flip, see how this is looking. And looking good. So I'm just gonna flip it right over. Oops, scoop it underneath there. Nice flip. We got a really nice browning on the meat, right? And I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna let this do the same thing, just to give it a nice browning on the other side before we start adding all the liquids into the pan. So we're gonna let that brown for about another 8 minutes, and then we'll come back and pretty much get the dish finished off. All right, so another few minutes have passed. Let's have a peek in here. It's looking good. Now what we're gonna do, these chops are so thick is why I let them cook a little bit longer. I'm gonna add in some onions down the sides. All right, put some onions in, about half an onion. We're gonna put in some garlic. I wanna make sure that the garlic is touching some of that steel, so it brown nicely. We have some of the nice caramelization from the meat on the pan, which is nice too. I'm gonna throw in here some fresh thyme. So some chopped up thyme as well we're gonna put into the dish. All right, and all the thyme out of here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna flambe this with a bit of brandy, right? So just give this onions a bit of a stir quickly here. Looking good. All right, they're gonna cook down really fast. When I flambe this, it's gonna help that as well. And I'm gonna turn my flame up a little bit higher. I want to get the pan really nice and hot. When you want to flambe, especially if you're at home and you're entertaining, and, you know, part of cooking is having that fun time. You want a nice flame. If you want to flambe really nicely, make sure you get the pan hot. right? So we want it nice and hot. So let's get this on the go. We're gonna pour some brandy in there, and we'll do our, didn't get hot, there we go. So we got some flambé action happening, right? And that is definitely the way we like to do it. So I'm gonna put in some cabbage as well, right? So I put the cabbage right in there. We're cooking off all that brandy. Cabbage goes in. And I'm gonna deglaze this with a little bit of chicken broth as well, right? Put the chicken broth in, all right? And that's what we call flaming pork chops. And then we're gonna add the apples. So I'm gonna push the cabbage around to get everything a bit of that liquid. We're gonna put the apples in here as well. We're gonna cook this for a few more minutes. A little bit of cream. I'm gonna take the pork chops out and we'll just let the sauce reduce. All right, and then we'll check the seasoning and it should be good to go, right? So everything's in here. I'm trying to get everything down under a bit of liquid. So it's smelling really nice and yummy. You can really smell the brandy. Nope, I think I lost an apple there. That should be right, okay. So now I'm gonna put the lid on. When the whistle goes off, we're gonna open the ready temp valve. When the whistle goes off, I'm gonna take the pork chops out. We'll let them rest while we finish the sauce, and then it's good to serve. All right, so the whistle's gone off. It's only been about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes since I put the lid on, but what I wanna do now is I'm gonna take the pork chops out, and we're gonna finish off the sauce here. We're gonna reduce the sauce, right? So this is looking nice and yummy here, right? Because if we left this in and you continue to cook it, you're actually changing your whole method of cooking and starting to braise the meat, and we don't really wanna do that. So it's a nice, nice pork chop. We'll let that rest. We're just gonna reduce this down. It's probably gonna take about 3 minutes to reduce. We'll check the seasoning, and then it should be good to go. All right, so our sauce is reduced fantastically here, right? We can see the bottom of the pan here. I'm gonna shut the heat right off. We're gonna put this on our chops. They've rested for a few minutes. And we'll just put this on here. This is a great dish to serve to the table. Something nice to serve with this would be like maybe a pumpkin squash, you know, or some roasted root vegetables being the time of year. Let's get this around like this. Put the cabbage in here, and we'll pour some of the sauce on here as well. And there we go. That's the way it should be. All right, a little thyme for garnish. And there we have it. So we have some seared pork chops with some brandy flambéed apples. It's a great dish for this time of year, so I hope you guys really enjoy that. I'm Chef Warren, and that's the way we like to do it at Dinner for Two, because life's delicious.